lot of people that they start with, like high motivated and, high motivation, and they're, yeah, yeah, yeah. But then what happens is that they hear something they don't like, life gets harder than they thought it was going to, or whatever happens, that they abandon. They abandon following Jesus. So now we move to verse 22, continue in Matthew 7. Now we go to verse 22. Ephraim, can you read, or you're not ready to read yet?
Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? In your name cast out demons, and in your name perform many miracles.
And then 23, Mandy?
And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. In covenant, depart from me, you who practice lawlessness, which is willful rebellion against God's revealed will, lives contradicted the, am I saying this right?
Lives contradicted the righteousness God requires. Yeah, maybe I didn't word that right. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So this is a person that they've done a lot. They've done a lot for the Lord, or they feel that they have, and they are, because the Lord is saying, not everybody that says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the ones who are in obedience, right? And he says, in that day of judgment, a lot of people are going to start, they're going to revert back. They're going to use the good works that they did in hopes that that's going to be enough to save them. Oh, let me go back to my works. Let me go back to the good things that I did. Um, you know, remember, Lord, way back then, I did this for you. I did that for you. And they, of course, their defense is going to be all the good things that they did. But the Lord is going to tell them, I never knew you in covenant. I never knew you. I never knew exactly what side you were on, because you were so wavering on following the world, and then following me. And he says, and you practiced lawlessness. Remember, we talked about the words for sin, lawlessness, a willful rebellion against God's revealed will. And so this is the person, they're going to try to revert back to works, and God's going to say, your own disobedience, your own the rebellious life you lived, it's what's going to be their demise. And so here we're talking about the two different kinds of disciples, knowing them by their obedience. It is not going to be about what you achieved. It might, Lord, I built a huge church for you. Well, first question is, did God even say to do that? Because it's about obedience. It's not about how great things you do. It's about the obedience. It's about the heart. What was your heart posture? Are you saying that now because you're trying to say it out of pride? So from there, we go into the two different kinds of disciples and obedience. And now the Lord leads us into two different kinds of builders, knowing them by their foundation. You see how this is kind of flowing. All of this flows together. So now we go into from inspecting the fruit to inspecting the obedience, and so now into inspecting the foundation. And so we go to Matthew 7:24. Let's see, Miss Pam, could you read? I guess you can read those two.
Okay. Matthew 7:24-27. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them bears fruit, obedience, may be compared to a wise man who built his house, structure of one's
Mhm.
life, on the rock, immovable foundation on Christ. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew, trials, judgments, tribulations on every side, and beat against that house, and yet it did not fall because its foundation was on the rock, Jesus Christ.
Amen. So
Amen.
here it's not saying that the foundation is so much the works, but what is the foundation? Because he says that those who hear the words and act on them. What is that called? It's called obedience. So obeying, when obedience produces fruit in our lives, and so that obedience of not just hearing the words of the Lord, but acting on them, action, doing, obeying, that right there, it's your foundation. So you have an immovable foundation, and then that foundation. I don't know if you know much about trials that structures have. When I used to work in offshore construction, a company in offshore construction, when they would build a new ship, they had something called sea trials, and they would go and send it off on a sea voyage, where it would have to undergo some weathers, the waves, the pressure, of just being out, like if it was working on a project and it's got some bad weather, and what was the purpose of that? Was to see if the structure was strong enough, if it was well built to withstand whatever weather the ship would have to go on. And they do that also with structures, with buildings. The foundation engineers have done enough study to know that if they're going to put a structure that weighs or has this many levels, that foundation is going to have to be really thick so that it can withstand the weight. And so through trial and error, they've learned how much thickness of concrete they need to carry that weight. You look at bridges and you see those columns that are huge, because it needs to be able to support all the weight that's going to go on it. And so those are the trials, the judgments that the Christian is now going through, these trials, right? The rain, and you got floods, and you got wind, and it's beating against the house. And so think of it like a hurricane. And it says, but yet it didn't fall because the foundation was on the rock, which is Christ. And then we go to, let's look at Luke 6:48. Chaveli, it's your turn. If you can do Luke 6:48, please.
He is like a man building a house who dug deep and laid a foundation on the rock, and when a flood occurred, the torrent burst against that house and could not shake it because it had been well built.
So it said, the foundation has to be dug. They have to dig. They don't just put it on top of the ground. They gotta dig under the ground. They gotta make a hole, and that foundation goes in there. And so this is just the same story, but now found in Luke. And then let's look at Proverbs 24, 3-4. Ephraim.
By wisdom a house is built, and by understanding it is established. And by knowledge the rooms are filled with all precious and pleasant riches.
So it needs wisdom, and it needs understanding, and it needs knowledge, right? Which is the Lord. So now we go to verse 26, still continuing from Matthew 7. Now this is the opposite. The first one was the wise one. So now let's look at the foolish builder. Jerry.
Everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand, shifting foundation, vulnerable to collapse. The rain fell and the floods came and the winds blew and slammed against that house, and it fell, and great was its fall.
So this is not, don't think of it as just like a little hut. Think of it as a structure, an actual structure, or building a house that has rooms and it has a roof, and even back then they would have like a kind of like a not a balcony, but you could sit on the roof. So there's a lot of weight on that. And it says that the one that hears it, okay, I hear and I acknowledge, right? That part's good, but does not act. This is a two-part thing. Hearing it, okay, but acting on it. The one who does not act on it, he's like a foolish person that builds on sand. And when the trials come, it's going to fall. That person is not going to pass that test, and they're going to fall apart. These are the people that you see that they just fall apart at the problems that come in life because they don't act, they don't follow, they don't obey what the instructions that God is giving to them. Don't get into these kind of situations. Stay away from these kind of peoples. Don't come into these kind of relationships. You know, there's so many instructions that we receive. And the person that chooses to not follow, they are, because of that disobedience, they're on sand. Disobedience puts you on sand. And then we have Luke 6:49, Mindy.
But the one who has heard and has not acted accordingly is like a man who built a house on the ground without any foundation. And the torrent burst against it, and immediately it collapsed. And the ruin of that house was great.
And unfortunately, some destructions like this doesn't just affect the person. Excuse me. It affects a whole family. It can affect a whole community. It's not just a person that is affected by disobedience. Many times it'll affect parents, it'll affect children, it'll affect siblings. It's got more effects than just that one person. So we have to think about your obedience or disobedience is not just affecting you, and it's not just blessing you. If you're in obedience, you're not the only one that is receiving God's blessing. Your family is also receiving blessing, because whether you realize it or not, and the example that you're giving to your children, and likewise disobedience, walking in disobedience, you're not the only one being affected by that. There are other people in the same little boat that are being affected by our choices that we have. So we're going to stop right here before we get cut off. So that's just a good time of reflection to just say, you know, we need to make sure that our foundation's well. You know, that we if we do an inspection, we find obedience. That if we check for fruit, that we find good fruit. And so we have to say, Lord, help me to, and this takes daily. Lord, help me, Lord. Help me to live in obedience to you. Help me, Father, to say no to the temptations of Satan. And so it takes a daily walk of obedience with the Lord. I'm going to close us out. Thank you for everybody for joining today.
If you have been blessed by this teaching and want to learn more about the Word of God, we can be reached by email at joshuatministries@gmail.com.